Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. So earlier this morning, actually very, very early, like at 3:45 a.m. Eastern, T-Mobile presented at the Morgan Stanley European Technology Conference in Barcelona. So it was Peter Osvaldik and Neville Ray that presented at the conference, and I wanted to leave some commentary on these updates that were given, and I'll leave a link to this script in the description down below so you guys could check it out if you want to. So, very first question was to Peter, and he was asked, what are expectations like for the rest of 22 and then some of 2023? So, of course, he started off pretty much saying he, of course, can't give any guidance for 2023 just yet, but he just said continuing to execute the plan, build the network in the small markets, rural areas to continue growing share. And they are continuing to grow in the top 100 markets with the network build where it currently is. Most of the top 100 markets should be mostly completed with the N41 build. I know there's some sites, of course, that are still lagging, that still need to be upgraded, but they should be in the very, very high percentile when we're talking the top 100 markets. They are in the process of still building a tremendous foundation with the network and then, of course, the brand. He did mention that the brand image is continuing to get stronger and bigger. They feel like now they have enough data that they were able to pull from Q2 and Q3 that they confidently can now say that they are capturing the switching decisions in the market. So it's somewhat reflected in the third quarter as we did see them become the biggest grower on the postpaid side, but they think moving forward that they will be the first one to capture or they will be the company chosen when it comes time for the switching decisions. So they consider that as winning. So he mentioned something very interesting. He mentioned that more growth right now, there's more growth coming on fixed wireless access in the metro core versus the rural core, which makes sense because they're still growing the network. So that makes perfect sense. No surprises there. Also, he did mention fixed wireless access right now is low marginal cost. So there's nothing bigger going into that right now in terms of the CapEx, because they're just using the extra capacity to fund that build, so to speak. So just keep that in mind. They are growing. They are still growing that share, of course, but they are continuing to build out the network so they can grow more on the fixed wireless access side. So next they asked Neville about the supply chain. He mentioned that starting early in 2020 was a very big benefit to the supply. So for the remainder of 2022, he did say no big issues anticipated on supply, but 2023 may look a bit different. He did say that he had right now, as of today, after decommissioning the 30,000 Sprint sites, that he had the largest macro network and densest in the United States. Looking at that objectively, you could still say that they have the smallest network. So having the largest macro network on the smallest footprint makes sense. And most of their towers are still geared towards the urban metro core. So they got some spreading out to do in the rural environments, building new macros on that geographical footprint, which they will, get to over the next, that leads me to the next question. The small market rural area, the SMERA, as they call it, build out is supposed to happen over the next 24 months. So 23 and 24, they're supposed to grow that network footprint in that environment pretty big, according to him. So that's going to be a pretty big milestone for the company. They've never had a competing network in that environment. So very good to see. And then he was asked about the fixed wireless access. How is the capacity currently handling the a little over 2 million customers? And Neville said he said it's no problem at this time. He says most of the fixed wireless access customers are now using around 400 gigs per month. He said that's right in line with cable. They can handle that without any issues. Most of the towers now have multi-gig backhaul. So he didn't go into specifics on that. He did say that. So I don't know, multi-gig, is that 5? Is it 10? We don't know. But he did say that. And then he did say that they do have capacity for more than 7 to 8 million customers, but that's what they're guiding right now. They're always conservative on their guidance, but they have capacity for more. So they offer the services right now to 40 million addresses that have access to it. And they anticipate, out of those 40 million, by 2025, they anticipate to have signed up 7 to 8 million. If they do see more of growth or a bigger growth spurt that they weren't anticipating, they will probably include that in another analyst day or a different quarterly earnings where they say, hey, look, we now anticipate we will get to 8 to 9 million fixed wireless access customers if the growth does show that. So those are just a few updates, just to kind of give you my take on that, a perspective take. A lot of work left to do for T-Mobile. Now, I know for some that may be like, what do you mean? It looks like they're just about done and they're growing. But you got to remember, these two work for the company, so they're going to talk about the company in a very positive way, right? They're not going to tell you, hey, we still have 200,000 square miles of coverage that we need to fill in. We still got this, that, and that. They're never going to talk about the company in a negative way. And that's where I come in, and I have to look at it, prospectively. So there's still a lot of work for T-Mobile to do. There's still concerns on my part, the lowering of the CapEx next year that's potentially coming. And then a lot of the footprint that they are growing currently, right? They are growing the share in the small market rural area. But if you compare that network to the competitors in those areas, T-Mobile is still relatively smaller versus AT&T and Verizon. So is that going to be enough for that customer to stay with T-Mobile in that part as it stands today? Or do those customers eventually churn? That's going to be something that we need to keep an eye out on the channel. We need to keep looking at the quarterly numbers, Q4, Q1, 23, Q2, to see if we see a spike in churn. Because if they are equally now growing that rural footprint, like a 50-50 split between metro and rural, that means they're starting to load up. And I know it's easy to post those bigger numbers when you're going from a 0 share to 5% or 6% in some of those markets. In some of those markets that they are now growing and competing in, T-Mobile never existed before at all. In fact, they never existed in those markets, let's say, over the last 20 years. So I know that's easy to do, right, in that sense. I know it's hard work on the back end, the network, the retail distribution, but if you're coming from 0 and you go to 5%, it's going to look like you did a lot, right? But now we're going to start seeing, hey, can that customer actually use the network how they want to use it? Can they go over and visit the relatives and over to the next town and still have service? Can they go out to the factories where they work and still have service? That's going to be something to keep an eye out on if the churn starts going up. If the churn remains at levels that we've seen or even lower, then that tells me the customer is either making a sacrifice on price or T-Mobile is good enough. That's what that tells me. And the reason I wanted to reflect and kind of speak on that in this video is because I remember those Sprint days, the network vision. And I remember Sprint back then had unlimited, right? They had they had the cheapest price, fairly, in line with what T-Mobile was offering, maybe a little less. And people were still leaving the network because it sucked. It was a smaller network. And even within the footprint of where they had native coverage in the metro core, the bigger cities, it sucked. And the churn reflected that in a big way. They were losing 250,000 plus customers a quarter. So if the T-Mobile rural footprint is still much, much, much smaller as they continue growing the share in those parts, and it just sucks and the consumer can't use it, at some point in time, enough is going to be enough for that consumer. They're going to start churning out at some point. There are other options down the market space. There's MVNOs, prepaid, that they can get something cheaper and still maintain, the reliable networks of AT&T and Verizon in those parts. So if that network is really that much smaller and T-Mobile hasn't really made an effort on building it out in those parts, we are going to start seeing it on the churn. It has to happen. Like I said, unless they're just willing to make the sacrifice because they like the deal, the pricing, or T-Mobile now is good enough in those parts. So that's what I kind of wanted to leave you guys with on this video. Something to think about, right? And you can, of course, leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. But I'm coming from a point of something's got to give. If the network sucks in those parts, it's going to reflect somewhere. And we saw that with Sprint. The network flat out sucked back then. As they were transitioning from 3G to LTE, towers were completely offline for days. And then when LTE came on air, it was like a small slice of 5 megahertz on band 25, where if you let more than 100 people on that bandwidth, it was done for. And it reflected in Sprint's churn. So we'll see the outcome. We'll see what happens over the next few weeks as we get through Q4, and then we'll get that quarterly earnings, and then as we go through 2023. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel for more. Like, share, subscribe, follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.